I'm Sharon Tazwell. Here is your Spectrum News in 90. President Biden condemned campus protests that have taken a violent turn in the U.S. Biden says students have a right to protest, but added there is no place for any kind of hate in America. More than 2,000 people have been arrested on college campuses since mid-April.
This isn't a moment for politics. It's a moment for clarity. So let me be clear. Peaceful protest in America. Violent protest is not protected. Peaceful protest is.
Donald Trump's hush money trial resumed Thursday with more witness testimony. A former attorney for Stormy Daniels admitted to jurors that he told Michael Cohen if Trump lost the election, Daniels would lose her leverage against the former president.
It's election interference at the highest level. Never been done before in our country.
President Biden traveled to North Carolina, spending several hours in Charlotte with families of the 4 law enforcement officers killed on the job. Earlier in the day, a procession was held for one of the fallen officers, U.S. Marshal Alden Elliott. Those are your headlines. Now, let's take a look at your weather on the ones.
Hi there, I'm meteorologist Robert Satos. Well, the very active spring weather pattern will continue. The eastern half of the country will start off with Friday. You could see there with some heavy storms, especially coming across the Gulf states there. Eventually, this will move into parts of the Northeast for late Friday, more around the plains, and then there, the West Coast, another storm will be coming through. Forecast lows to start off our Friday, many 60s, including Columbus, fairly mild. Warm there. New York starting to cool down with 60s back in the mix.
There should be no place on any campus, no place in America for anti-Semitism or threats of violence against Jewish students. There is no place for hate speech or violence of any kind.
Strong words from President Joe Biden. Thanks for joining us. I'm Sharon Tazwell. The president sending an urgent warning Thursday in his first address to the nation about the ongoing pro-Palestinian demonstrations on college campuses. Biden rejected calls from student protesters to change his approach to the war in Gaza. Spectrum's Evan Kozloff reports from Washington.
We're a civil society, and order must prevail.
President Joe Biden speaking from the White House on Thursday, asserting that while dissent is essential in a democracy, the right to free speech does not include the right to engage in violence.
Vandalism, trespassing, breaking windows, shutting down campuses, forcing the cancellation of classes.
The president's remarks, a response to pro-Palestinian protests on college campuses, including some that have turned violent. It followed police breaking up a pro-Palestinian encampment at UCLA early Thursday, resulting in more than 130 arrests. Similar protests were held at colleges across the country, from Oregon and Wisconsin to Pennsylvania and D.C. In New York, new body camera video shows the moment when police broke through barricades Tuesday night at Columbia University to arrest hundreds of students who had occupied and vandalized a campus building. The protests triggering action on Capitol Hill, where more than 300 House members supported legislation on Wednesday aimed at combating anti-Semitism on college campuses. In his remarks, Biden also made a point to condemn anti-Semitism.
There should be no place on any campus, no place in America.
At the end of his remarks, Biden was asked whether these protests were making him reconsider any of his Middle East policies, including his support for Israel. His response was just one word: no. In Washington, I'm Evan Kozloff, Spectrum News.
Joining us now from Southern California, Spectrum News political anchor Alex Cohen. Alex, you've been keeping a close eye on these protests at UCLA. What do you make of it, and how could this impact the university's graduation ceremony coming up?
That ceremony is set to happen on June 14th. You know, that is a bit of a ways away, but there have been so many emotions evoked on that campus in recent days. It will be very interesting to see what happens next. As encampments are being cleared away this afternoon, you have a lot of frustration from students about how things were handled there in terms of a lack of law enforcement present when counter-protesters showed up, frustrated that after paying paying so much for their kids to go to this beloved academic institution that many of their classes they've not been able to attend. They've not been able to access the library. And of course, you've got politicians of all stripes weighing in to boot, including Republicans here in California. Today, some of them are saying the state should no longer be providing funding to campuses unless they can absolutely guarantee that they can keep all of their students safe.
And Alex, as our Evan Kozloff reported, President Biden addressed the nation Thursday about the ongoing demonstrations. It's his first time speaking directly to the country. Why now? And what's the message he's trying to convey?
The message that he tried to convey today: freedom of speech, okay, violence, not okay. And I would like to think that that is something that most is what is considered free speech and what is considered hate speech.
All right, Alex Cohen in Southern California. Thanks.
Thank you.
Overseas now to the Middle East. Israel and Hamas appear to be making serious progress in an effort to end the war in Gaza and return Israeli hostages. The militant group announced Thursday that it's sending a delegation to Egypt to continue negotiations. Spectrum's Cassie Simeon is in Washington with the latest.
After weeks of deadlock, Hamas announced Thursday it would return to the negotiating table.
That's a sign that the process is still viable and that it hasn't been shut off.
The announcement came after Secretary of State Antony Blinken concluded a visit to the region aimed at getting both sides to stop fighting, at least temporarily.
There is no time for delay. There's no time for further haggling.
Include 3 stages for an immediate ceasefire and a partial release of Israeli hostages. It also includes negotiations for a permanent calm, which would include a withdrawal of Israeli forces from Gaza. Professor Ned Lazarus says it's a positive sign that Hamas is sending negotiators to continue the ceasefire discussions, but that Hamas so far seemed unwilling to compromise.
Hamas has to, agree to those proposals. That Israel has agreed to the proposals, has put out the framework. According to, again, Secretary of State Blinken, Israel has compromised some of its long-held positions, and they are waiting for the official response from Hamas. It's very difficult to ascertain what that will be.
Meanwhile, the effort to get humanitarian aid into Gaza is ramping up. 2 months ago, President Joe Biden authorized the U.S. military to construct a pier in the Mediterranean to bring the aid. In Washington, Cassie Simeon, Spectrum News.
Donald Trump returned to a Manhattan courtroom Thursday. It was another day of testimony in the hush money criminal trial against the former president. Keith Davidson and forensic analyst Douglas Dahl took the stand. Davidson is a former lawyer for Stormy Daniels, who played a key role in negotiating a hush money payment to the adult film actress. Well, during cross-examination, the defense painted Davidson as a shady lawyer. Thursday's proceedings began with a contempt hearing over whether Trump again violated his gag order. The judge did not make a ruling.
Because this judge, who's totally conflicted, has me under an unconstitutional gag order. Nobody's ever had that before.
Well, following his court appearance, the former president made a stop at the New York City fire station. He continues to call this election interference, saying he should instead be out campaigning. Victims and families at the recent North Carolina shooting.
Spectrum News Plus, news from a new perspective, dedicated to refreshing storytelling and empowering communities across the nation. With balanced reporting, providing real context and in-depth coverage 24 hours a day.
Here's a look at your forecast across the country.
Local stories, connecting communities. We are Spectrum News Plus. Streaming now on the Spectrum News app and free with your Spectrum subscription.
Sorry, guys, that took me for... What is this?
Well, you know how our T-Mobile home internet can slow down?
Uh-huh.
Turns out, walls can get in the way. So, I fixed it.
So instead of getting a Spectrum internet, which is fast...
Yes, but I think I fixed it.
By smashing a hole through our wall.
Well, technically, walls. Yeah, I might not want to go in the dining room.
Don't settle for T-Mobile cell phone internet.
Kids are natural.
This is why I don't leave the house.
Get faster, more reliable internet speeds with Spectrum.
When I never graduated from high school, I realized I wanted to go back to school because I didn't want to work these back-breaking jobs the rest of my life. With the help of my father and having my son, that was all the motivation that I needed to come back to school. I felt accomplished, made me feel that I could take on whatever challenges life throws at you.
Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org.
When I was in foster care, I never knew when I would have to move, so I always had my suitcase ready to go. Then one day, I was adopted. My new parents opened their hearts and homes. My parents take me on trips I never thought I would go on. They gave me a home and an even better reason to use that suitcase. My parents aren't perfect, but they're perfect for me.
We continue to see the classic springtime setup here. Hi there, I'm meteorologist Robert Santos, and that includes some of these spring storms, some of them severe. And you can see all across the central U.S., all of these storm reports, and then even some high elevation snow moving across the northern tier there. Rain and flooding, especially down in Texas as a result of these storms coming across, and even some tornadoes. So Wednesday into Thursday, about 20 or so sightings of tornadoes right here where some of the strong winds have been. Now this pattern will continue as we look over through Friday. You can see rain from the Midwest all the way coming down. We'll take a look at the particular timing of this. Now here's Friday at around 11 o'clock in the morning. Scattered showers. Some of them were a little bit heavier down into Arkansas and Louisiana and Mississippi. As we go into Friday evening, let's see some of that starting to move across the rest of the eastern half of the country, and then more potentially severe storms moving across the central plains. And then we'll be watching this particular storm. In fact, let's go out west and we'll take a look at the timing of this, because this is where these disturbances are coming from that have been basically causing some trouble all across the area as it clashes with some warmer air. Cold storms bringing some snow in the higher elevations of the Cascades down to the Sierra as we go into the weekend, and that also impacting Southern California's weather. St. Louis, Missouri, rain in the forecast for you come Saturday and Sunday. Temperatures there from the 70s and 80s on Friday. But notice your temperatures do warm up from the low 70s on Friday into the upper 70s and some low 80s. So you've got a warm weekend. In fact, warmer than average temperatures for many across the eastern half of the country. Syracuse, New York, a warm Friday with upper 70s, but then we cool back down into the low 60s with rain in the forecast there. Charlotte, North Carolina, thunderstorms in your forecast for Saturday, so it's going to be a wet weekend for you. Fairly warm for Friday with mostly cloudy conditions.
President Biden spent part of his Thursday in Charlotte, North Carolina, where he met with families of the 4 officers who were killed Monday while trying to serve a warrant. He also met with the other officers who were injured during the ambush. Spectrum News anchor Carla Redditt joins us now from Charlotte. And Carla, around the meetings.
Sharon, not at all. Those meetings happened behind closed doors. No media allowed inside because the White House said it wanted to respect the privacy of the grieving families. President Biden landed Thursday afternoon, greeting the Charlotte Mecklenburg police chief as well as the mayor before he went to meet with the families of the victims as well as with the recovering officers. The president addressed his visit with the families during a campaign event in Wilmington where he offered his condolences.
We pray for their loved ones and those left behind. I met their children, their husbands, their wives, and their mothers and fathers. And we pray for the recovery of the brave wounded as well.
Monday afternoon, members of a U.S. Marshals task force approached a home, attempting to serve an arrest warrant against a convicted felon suspected of possessing a firearm. Police say they came under fire from a high-powered rifle. Terry Clark Hughes Jr. was killed by officers. Sharon?
Carla, it's not just the president paying his respects to these officers. People have been lining the streets as processions make their way from the medical examiner's office to funeral homes.
They certainly have, Sharon. I can tell you it has been a bittersweet yet beautiful sight to see. Lights and sirens led the procession of fallen officer William Alden Elliott Thursday morning. Mourners gathered together on bridges and along roadways to pay their respects. It was a similar scene Wednesday as the procession for Deputy U.S. Marshal Thomas Weeks made its way to Mooresville. Now, another procession will happen Friday morning ahead of the funeral for Charlotte-Mecklenburg police officer Joshua Iyer. Meanwhile, the Towers to Tunnel Foundation announced Thursday that it will pay off the mortgages of the 4 families these men left behind. Sharon?
So sad. And of course, our hearts go out to all these families. Crews have recovered the body of a 5th worker killed in the Baltimore bridge collapse. The victim has been identified as Miguel Angel Luna Gonzalez. He was found inside a submerged construction truck. The workers were the only ones on the bridge when it collapsed in March. A 6th worker is still missing. An estimated 40 million Americans live with a chronic sleep-related breathing disorder known as obstructive sleep apnea. Continuous positive airway pressure, or CPAP machines, can help, but at least 1/3 of patients don't use them regularly. Spectrum's Elise Underwood explains how a new device hopes to make a difference.
For millions of CPAP users, the main problem is the fit of the mask, the flow, and that forced air. However, researchers at the University of Cincinnati have come up with a new solution and some new technology. It's called the Vortex PAP, and patients like it.
The model that he's using now is actually pretty good. It fits in my nostrils very well. My wife told me, she said, sometimes you don't breathe properly when you're sleeping.
He's spent a lot of time with Liren Oren and Dr. Ann Romaker at the University of Cincinnati.
Mr. Brown was our first patient. We tested him 3 years ago, and then we brought him back now.
However, it took about 10 years for the Vortex PAP to get to this point.
The biggest challenges was how to make it quiet, because, you know, it's very easy to pulsate airflow and kind of create these vortices, but in a quiet way was a real challenge for us. This was something that we had to, work very hard on.
The Vortex PAP doesn't need a seal like a traditional mask.
They just produce continuous airflow.
The farther away you get, the less momentum. However, Oren and the team use a different flow.
Put some smoke in. I'm going to show you what a vortex looks like and what it does. And then I'm going to shoot. You can see I'm going to go there. So now imagine yourself, smaller scale, force that can keep the airway open. I can put more smoke in there.
With different styles available, the team hopes everyone can find a perfect fit.
There are too many people who struggle with CPAP. And most of them, it's a claustrophobic feeling or feeling that things are tight, not liking things on their face. And having this option will, I think, really revolutionize care.
For Brown, the biggest problem has been the tightness of traditional straps.
I don't feel any stress being pulled on my skin or anything. And so I think I'll be able to sleep with this a whole lot easier.
For Oren, it's a dream come true.
It's very fulfilling. It's amazing. I've been working on this. This has been my baby, for so long, and to finally see it, materialize and all things comes together. I always say, the first few years, I figured out all the ways how this thing is not going to work.
So far, so great. He can wear it.
The thing I really need now is just airflow and just to go to sleep. That's pretty much it.
A restful sleep and a new device to help make it happen. Elise Underwood, Spectrum News.
Saddle up. We're taking you behind the scenes of one of the world's biggest sporting events. Just ahead on Spectrum News.
An answer to one of society's biggest questions may be found in the youngest minds. Does poverty impact a child's development, their performance in school? The hypothesis that mothers who have access to cash raise babies with stronger brain development.
The basis of the baby's first-year study is really to understand whether providing economic support would change children's
favorite devices.
Okay, Dad. 1, 2, 3. You saved me. Dad?
okay?
I'm fine, dear.
Your hero needs you now. And AARP.org/caregiving.
I don't remember how it started.
Go to that.
Our back and forth. It always came back.
Dad!
You probably don't remember what you told me,
That was perfect.
but I heard every word.
Well, the Central Plains has really been seeing, the stormy weather over the last few days, really through late last week. Now, that's just Robert Santos. We're also continuing to track some disturbances moving across the west, and the next one coming in will be bringing snow into the Rockies through Saturday morning. And then we're experiencing some warmer than average temperatures. For those of you out in the central and eastern U.S., you probably have been noticing that. I mean, New York in the 80s. Even Boston was experiencing some mild conditions. Now, New York going down to low 60s on Friday. Rain in the forecast for you in Cleveland and Louisville. Louisville, pretty mild in 70s, and Austin right around the 80s there. Going out to the West Coast, we've got dry weather for one more day. 60s there for San Francisco, Seattle, and Los Angeles experiencing some mild conditions. Salt Lake City, rain in your forecast with upper 50s, and Denver in the 70s, Dallas in the 80s. Now let's look all across the U.S. and we've had some warmer than average conditions for the central U.S. into the eastern half of the country, and pretty big discrepancy between the averages and was 15 to 17 over the last few days. So there are the actual numbers. Still warm for Columbus, but coming down from the 80s now to upper 70s. And instead of 80s and 70s here, we've got 50s and 60s. Still warm for you in Charlotte and Atlanta. And then as we go into the weekend, some of you will begin to cool down a little bit, including Charlotte there, back down into the 70s. In the meantime, Las Vegas, Phoenix, 80s and 90s. Okay, the next 7 days here in St. Louis, you take a look, and your average high is about 73 degrees. We'll be above that pretty much for the next 7 days, and many days in the 80s there. Louisville, Kentucky, 70s for Friday, and then even 80 on Sunday, and more 80s coming next week. For those of you attending the Kentucky Derby, as you know, it's been raining, and it's going to continue for tomorrow with temperatures getting up to about 74 degrees right around 1 p.m., 72. So it'll be a bit muddy out there. Now, the 7 days in New York and Sunday, so you've got a cooler weekend, and then temperatures spike back up Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday back into the 70s. For Los Angeles, staying below average for the next 7, a little cooler on Sunday with a slight chance for some showers and some very windy conditions there developing as we go into the weekend.
Mortgage rates are on the rise. The average rate on a 30-year fixed rose to 7.22%, up from 7.17. A year ago, the rate was 6.39%. Well, the makers of the popular weight loss drug Wegovy says it'll increase supply after seeing an increase of new users. Danish pharmaceutical Novo Nordisk says at least 25,000 U.S. customers start taking the drug each week. Novo Nordisk has been limiting the availability of low doses of It's considered by many to be the greatest 2 minutes in sports, the Kentucky Derby. The 150th edition of the race is this Saturday. And what most people don't see is the amount of work that goes on behind the scenes. A large majority of the workers are immigrants. Spectrum's Geraldine Torales has their story.
During the mornings leading up to the Kentucky Derby, there's a lot of activity at Churchill Downs backside stables.
Now they're going to give that horse some medication, and then when these horses came back from the track, they will scope to make sure they didn't bleed or didn't force themselves, or they don't have like a lung infection.
That's Henry Lima listing some of the things that need to be done to take care of the horses. He is a foreman who has several tasks to ensure that things run smoothly.
It's like a second hand for the assistant trainer.
Lima is originally from Guatemala and has been in the United States for about a time.
I like it. I have been here for a while, like I say. The other reason is you can save money, and that's the main reason we came to this country, to save money and help our families, because we live inside this property and we don't pay rent.
About 1,000 people work the backside, with immigrants making up about 80% of them. The majority of those immigrants are from Latin America.
A lot of people have just come from really difficult situations, you know, where they're coming from rural areas of really poverty-stricken situations, and they're just in search of a better life here in the States, and are really the heart and the backbone of this industry.
The Backside Learning Center is a nonprofit that is based on the grounds of Churchill Downs. Workers can take English classes, get help with filling out paperwork, and get their children in the nonprofit's after-school program.
Our focus is really providing support and programming to the entire community here.
Lima learned English from going to the classes offered by the Backside Learning Center.
I love this place, you know, like the Learning Center is like my second home.
A place that, according to Lima, has had a positive impact on many people. In Louisville, Geraldine Torellis, Spectrum News.
I'm Sharon Tazwell. Thanks for watching. Your Spectrum News in 90s coming up right after this short break. Stay with us.
At Spectrum News, we're committed to strengthening the fabric of local communities through our reporting, with stories that inspire and news that matters. Streaming live on your smart TV and connected devices, plus on-demand weather forecasts. It's all there as you keeping you informed and in the know throughout your day. Spectrum News Plus, local stories connecting communities. Exclusively for Spectrum customers. Now available on your favorite devices.
At Spectrum, our workforce of over 100,000 employees are all located right here in the U.S. You can find them in our stores, in the field, and in our call centers with 100% U.S.-based customer service. Our team works hard to provide the towns, cities, and neighborhoods they live in with the reliable services that everyone counts on, making us one of America's most trusted companies. We're Spectrum, creating jobs and opportunities across the country, and proud to be 100% U.S.-based.
Today I'm going to talk to you about physics. Come on in, girls. Let's go. This is the first rocket to get humans to Mars.
Really tall.
You are the generation that will be stepping foot on Mars. Do I have a group of astronauts on my hands?
Yes.
You can become a rocket scientist or whatever else you want to be.
Here you go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Never gonna let you go.